college football is what he's doing right now, and he covers everything for them for the Washington Post. We're now pleased to be joined on the program again by Chuck Culpepper. Chuck, good to have you on the show again. Happy New Year, and have you all thawed out yet up there in D.C.?
Oh, I have a terrible thing to tell you. It's very unkind. Okay?
Uh-oh.
I'm based in Miami.
Oh, you're not up there in D.C.
I'm a full-time Washington Post, but I'm based in Miami. It's not really fair for me to say that to your listeners.
That's
or
okay.
To you.
That means you're living the good life,
chill,
right?
The wind chill is like 73 today, so I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize about that. Listen, if you're in a place where it's 73, you should be just relaxing there on the beach as much as possible.
Yeah, if there's like a boat that goes by or something, I'll hold the phone out so people can hear. Let people shirtless out on their boats here today.
Seriously, how many people do you fool with that?
Oh, everybody. We do have a few people on our staff. You know, our NBA writer, Ben Golliver, is based in Los Angeles. Okay. Obviously, there's great reasons for that. We have several staffers who are kind of sprinkled about, and I'm one of those, yeah. I mean, at some point, I could imagine living most anywhere, but Washington would be one of them. But yes, Miami in the southeast. When I do a lot of college football, it's really easy to get to Atlanta and then over to Tuscaloosa or Clemson or whatever. So it works.
Not too bad. Well, we'll get to the college football and the sports matters at hand in a moment, but I do know you did used to live here in the 757. Are you shedding any tears for all of us here in the Commonwealth and up there in D.C. with having to deal with all this craziness? And you see the news about the roadway there blocked and people trapped. I mean, you have to be a little bit feeling bad for everybody here, right?
Yes, and because I know those roads, I've been on those roads, 100 times. Especially the one that the artery up there to D.C. and 95, and you look at the aerial shots of that, and there's something in the bones that you feel where you know what it is,
Sure.
And you've been stopped on that road, not like that, but you've been stalled on that road many a time, maybe every time trying to get up there, but to see it like that to that extreme is it's wacko.
It is. So. It's a fear for me every time I'm going near Fredericksburg or Richmond or near D.C. for high school hoops or college sports game. Trust me, no doubt about it. Now, You did cover the Georgia-Michigan game, correct?
I did.
How surprised were you that got away so quickly?
Very. I completely expected a long battle of accumulating bruises between that Michigan offensive line, which had just had that game against Ohio State, which drew a congratulatory text from none other than John Madden to Jim Harbaugh, about best line play I've seen in ever so much time, versus the Georgia defense that we've known about all year, the front seven being great, the historic numbers up until the time that Alabama torched it, which was at that game too, and it shocked everyone there. No one could believe what was happening. So, yes, I figured that was going to be a big old clash. I was looking forward to see the Big Ten maybe test itself in a new way because of how Michigan had looked in recent games, and to have it fizzle within 3 possessions, 2 by Georgia and 1 by Michigan. It was already 14-0, and Stetson Bennett had already thrown the ball to 7 receivers, and different receivers. You just had the feeling, the certainty, really. Wow, This is it.
Well, it did feel like a big letdown, although I don't know that it totally diminishes what Michigan's done or even what Cincinnati did. I mean, we all expected Alabama to win rather comfortably, although I do think some of the people that have come out and said Cincinnati didn't belong. I mean, look, a lot of people have gotten clobbered here by Alabama. How about you? Do you feel like they still belonged in that national semifinal matchup with the Crimson Tide in Cincinnati's case?
Absolutely, and I feel like they belonged even if Oklahoma State had won the Big 12. Mm-hmm. I feel like they should have finished 4 to Oklahoma State's 5 in that case. And I feel like the game that they played against Alabama was maybe a bit how I expected it to look in terms of they did a lot of great things. They didn't score a touchdown, but you got the guy diving for it at the goal line, the receiver, where he's got possession of it for a second, and and here's the thing: it did not look any worse than did, say, Washington in the 2016 Peach Bowl against Alabama, or Notre Dame against both Clemson and Alabama in semifinals, different years, obviously, or even Ohio State one time against Clemson, 31-0, and also 2016. So they playing, or Oklahoma, when they had Kyler Murray, maybe they scored, but they did score more points down here. It was in Miami in the 2018 semifinal, but they were beaten soundly. So Cincinnati, in that regard, looked exactly the same as so many of these Bama opponents have through the years.
Chatting with Chuck Culpepper of the Washington Post. You can follow him on Twitter at Chuck Culpepper1. It's the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. He covers everything from football to basketball, baseball, golf, tennis, and everything in between there. And now we're talking college football tonight with him before the national championship comes your way on Monday night. You can catch it right here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Chuck, is just the SEC too strong for the rest of college football, and is that a healthy thing for the sport?
Yes, it's too strong, and no, it's not. I don't think it's healthy. I think it's worrisome. I don't know if I'm the only one worried that you have, that obvious chasm between the one conference and the rest, but I always grew up watching it, loving the times when, like, USC would play Alabama or a couple of regular season games in the late 70s, or just the intersectional games, the games where the team from one region would test itself against a team from the other, and you'd get that whole cultural aspect to it too. I think if the same neighborhood keeps winning all the trophies, what happens with the other neighborhoods, I don't know. We used to get national titles out of Nebraska, Penn State. We used to, even Washington up in Seattle won one in the early 90s, and so I do wonder. I did think that was one of the sport's biggest appeals through the years, is that whole national sense, and I do think that if one league keeps winning everything, then I don't think it's good for the sport now.
Nor do I. I mean, the Pac-12 is going winless here in the bowl season, and the ACC not having its traditionally strong year when it comes to Clemson being out of the mix. They've kind of been tailing off with some teams outside the league, Florida State, Miami. I mean, my goodness, yesterday I think was the 19-year anniversary of that unbelievable double overtime game when the Buckeyes stunned Miami in the title game. And I think back to those matchups like Ohio State, Miami, Chuck, as well as Southern Cal and Texas when you had Leinart, Bush, Vince Young. Georgia and Alabama have nothing to apologize for this matchup coming up, and we'll dive in on a second. But I don't feel like there's that same type of anticipation for the entire country. Certainly in the South and SEC country there is, but not for us on the East Coast or folks on the West Coast or even those in the Midwest.
I agree, and this is Georgia and Alabama obviously in different divisions, so they don't play every year or even really close to it regular season. But this will be their 1, 2, 3, 4th meeting in the postseason, if you count conference, the SEC title game over the last 4 years, plus one regular season game. That you're right, they don't have anything to apologize for. The appeal of the game coming up is that we are going to see eye-popping football talent on the field. It's just gets better and better and better, faster and faster and faster. Like Mr. Madden said in the documentary they just did about him. But like you say, the part that kind of makes your excitement kind of tempers it a little bit is the fact that we just keep seeing this. We've seen out of 8 title games, we've seen 3 Alabama Clemsons and 2 Alabama Georgias. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if this is, if this is lacking or wanting for people in general. Look at the TV numbers of the 3 Alabama Clemsons; they're all about the same. So it didn't tail off. So maybe people will just tune in for the excellence. But I just have to wonder if at some point those numbers might fade somewhat.
Yeah, and it looks like the numbers were down in comparison to last year for the bowl games over the weekend. And speaking of bowl games, the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, what did you make of that Ohio State-Utah game? And unless we get a classic down-to-the-wire OT thriller with Alabama-Georgia, and they did produce one of those here relatively recently, is the Ohio State-Utah game going to be the one we kind of remember from the end of this college football season in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I think so. And you know what the Ohio State-Utah game reminded me of is the Penn State-USC game when Saquon Barkley was on Penn State, and Penn State won the Big Ten and finished number 5. that one ended 52-49. This one ended 48-45. Same kind of thing, just all these dramatic twists. And then, you have Ohio State, the two opt-outs, the big-name receivers. But then you have this guy, Smith Njigba, who catches, what was it, 345 yards, just an extraordinary performance. And so I think that's the one. I think there were interesting games that day. Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Kentucky's win over Iowa was really interesting. And so I think, the last Bama-Georgia final we had was great. You have to remember that. So if this one's great, maybe it will cause a big buzz.
Yeah, it could, and I'll come back to that game with you in a moment. But here in the Commonwealth, the bowl season's been kind of strange. Around here in the 757, folks were really anticipating Old Dominion's big bowl game in Myrtle Beach against Tulsa, which they lost, but certainly there was a lot of buzz for them being in a bowl for the first time in 5 years. UVA didn't get a chance to play in a bowl game because of the COVID cloud. Virginia Tech got clobbered in its bowl game by Maryland. Chuck, do you think we have too many bowl games, and what's your feeling on the future of the sport in terms of bowl games and the playoff and where things are headed?
Well, I'll tell you, last year I went to the Myrtle Beach Bowl, and the assignment was because here was the first bowl of the COVID season. Was last year, and here was the first bowl. What's it look like? Who's there, and what do they think? And the people who attended that bowl just loved it, and so it wasn't sold out. It was maybe 2/3 or 1/2 or something, but these bowl games, if you get into them and you're 6-16 playing another 6-16, we can all kind of sneer at that, and that sounds dull to us. But people love it, and people love going to them. The players are thrilled with, usually with having a bowl bid, no matter what, funky little brand name is on it, and so are there too many bowls? I think you would have to say yes, but then they do TV numbers that are good enough to sustain them, and people keep adding new ones. So I guess the market speaks, and there aren't enough bowl games. So, and just being at that Myrtle Beach Bowl, which was between Appalachian State and I think it was, North Texas. Mm-hmm. Just being there just kind of reminded me how, there's people tailgating on a Monday morning, I believe it was. And it's just it's something that's, hey, we went to a bowl, and you meet people who played college football 20 years ago. They still talk about it sometimes. So I guess it's just there can never be enough of them.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point, Chuck. There's that memory and family connection that it's hard to break away from. And then the second part, let's just be perfectly honest, the legalization of sports wagering in a lot of states has been a game changer and has put people to have action on the action, if you will, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's always a factor, but never more than now.
For sure. A couple more, let you run. I appreciate the time tonight, Chuck. All these coaching changes, helping the sport, hurting the sport, a little bit of both, and it gives us all something to write and talk about regardless how you feel, though, right?
True. I'd say helping or hurting. I might just come down right in the middle on that, even though nobody likes it. Nobody likes a coach leaving his team. I'm talking about Notre Dame, while you still have a plausible shot to have a playoff berth, so you're not going to coach the playoff if that happens. Nobody likes all too much the bidding war, which is astonishing, the numbers, that the coaches are getting. People think that's madness, and I guess I see some of that too. But it, like you say, I mean, I'll tell you this. So we talk about the SEC being dominant. So where are we looking to see if someone might, rise up and break that up somehow? Well, right now I'm looking at Southern California, and the fact that Lincoln Riley went there, and the fact that he's a coach who draws recruits, and quarterbacks especially. So that move that he made is fascinating. I mean, I think it plugs in the entire Los Angeles area, which when Los Angeles is better at college football with either of those two teams, college football is better. So I guess I'd have to come, sadly, right down in the middle on that question.
Oh, no reason to apologize for that. And you're right. I think it feels like if you get Southern Cal or even a Miami, if they can overtake or be right there on even playing field with Clemson for a number of years with Cristobal, maybe they're one of those programs that can get back near the top where they're talked about consistently, like the Ohio States, like the Clemsons, like the Alabamas and the Georgias. And going back to Alabama and Georgia, previewing that one with us here, Chuck, how different do you expect the rematch to be from the SEC championship? And how much of a factor is John Mechie not being on the field this time for Nick Saban and company?
I think it's going to be a very different-looking game. I think I go back to 2017 when Georgia got clobbered by Auburn in mid-November and then beat Auburn 3 or 4 weeks later and by 28-7 in the SEC title game. I think what happens in the interim is something I'd love to go sit in the film rooms with them and see what they find, what they tweak, what they alter. You know, these coaches, what did they see from that previous game that went wrong? And because of that, I expect maybe a few surprises in this. I even kind of like Georgia to win, but I always get these things wrong. So, I do kind of like Georgia in this situation. I think it's a good, if you're going to have to play Alabama, it's a good situation to be in. And I do expect the game to look very different, yes.
It's wild that, I mean, you got Georgia. A lot of people do. The odds makers are with you on Georgia, and Nick Saban's an underdog yet again in a championship game. Go figure, right?
Yeah, that gives me pause.
It gives a lot of us pause. Well, always a pleasure talking with you. Great work in the Washington Post. As always, go check him out in the Post and on Twitter at Chuck Culpepper1. Be well and enjoy those sunny days in Florida. I know the people down here are counting for the springtime, but you'll be fine until then.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Thank you so much.
You bet. Chuck Culpepper with us here on the 757 at 6 as we go around the sport of college football.